Well, welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Abortion figures to be a major issue in the 2024 election campaigns, and Governor Hobbs just signed the petition to put abortion rights protections on the ballot. And here to talk about that is Republican political consultant Marcus DelArtino and Democratic consultant Tony Conti. Now, I do want to talk about abortion, but first of all, I do want to get, Marcus, your reaction to the water policy proposals that came out this week. Another massive issue in Arizona. Those policy positions and recommendations going to hit some resistance, some stiff resistance in this legislature, correct?
Yeah, they're going to have to go through the legislature, and that's it's going to be a rocky road to get there. This issue always boils down to, at the very basic level, a private property rights issue. We know where Republicans stand on private property rights. They're in the leadership majority in both chambers, so I think it'll be a tough road to hoe, as they say. All right, and let's move now to that other issue that we teased there in the bump. The abortion rights. Clearly, you can't overstate how much of an impact that this ballot initiative, which is expected to get on the ballot, is going to play in the overall politics of Arizona next year. Governor Hobbs did put her name to that petition. She's likely going to raise money. She told us later that she's probably going to, try to raise money for this effort and do what she can to get this passed. But also on this issue, we saw a major development on the state Supreme Court, because while we're waiting for this ballot measure to enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution, there's an old territorial law that the state Supreme Court is looking at that could be reinstated depending on how they come down on this. That law bans almost all abortions, except for the case where a mother's life is at risk. Justice Bill Montgomery, has recused himself.
Which he didn't want to do at first, it seems, right? He recused himself because he said, some pretty bad things about Planned Parenthood who are involved in the lawsuit. He referred to, they're providing abortion rights or abortion services as a genocide. And they asked him, like, hey, this guy cannot be fairly ruling on this. And so he at first sort of didn't want to recuse himself, but, it seems that he's, reversed course. And I don't think that it's any sort of big reveal or big thing that's coming up. I just think that the pressure probably finally got to him, maybe from other people in the Supreme Court, who knows, saying like, hey, this is one of those examples where you just need to think about the court before you think about your ego.
And as far as like the big reveal, the reason why there would even be a reveal, because he was very vague in his reasoning as to why he was recusing himself. Basically, he just said new information's come to light.
Yeah, I thought it was a great move, but to be honest with you, look, he takes the issue off the table. He's going to get, people forget, judges have to run for retention. We have increasingly, you can't order a ham sandwich without it becoming political anymore. So when they run for retention, there's going to be a campaign against them, which, politicizing the judiciary is a bad way to go, but unfortunately we're going that way. So he's taking that argument off the table from his accusers that he's tinkering around in this. So I think it was smart. I don't expect this to be a close case. So taking him out of the mix, I think, has little to no effect.
And speaking of that, I mean, is there anything to read into this from the judicial angle about how the Supreme Court is going to rule on reinstating that so-called territorial law that dates back to 1864? Is there anything to be read by Montgomery all of a sudden reversing course and saying, I'm out?
I think people are really eager to find out what the ruling is going to be, and so people are going to guess that maybe this means he's done a head count and, whatever his position is going to be there with him, without him there. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that this is something that Arizonans are going to be paying attention to, and regardless of what they rule, I think Arizonans are going to decide, I think the opinion is pretty clear, that the state is already too restrictive when it comes to abortion rights, and that is why this constitutional amendment needs to get on the ballot, and why voters, I believe, will overwhelmingly approve it.
All right, now let's change the focus. Let's talk a little bit about elections, and particularly election interference, which leads to the fact that the Attorney General Chris Macy announced this week that a grand jury has indicted 2 Cochise County boards of supervisors for failing to, certify the election until they were court ordered to do so. They're Class 5 felonies. These are very serious charges. Attorney General Mays sending a clear signal out there to other people thinking about doing this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they proclaim their innocence very strongly, but here's the problem. It's really expensive to defend your innocence, and it's going to take a long time. Chris Mays is clearly signaling, like, I'm going to have none of that as Attorney General. If you're going to start screwing around with elections, and she's been very strong on, several counties have come forward trying to do hand counts. She's had very strong opinions about that. And so we'll have to see what the net effect here is, but it's going to be a long couple years for these two county supervisors.
Yeah, and I've heard this, other people have defended it, saying the Cochise County supervisors, that they ended up following the law because they did end up voting to certify that, but only after a court order. So what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest problem that they have is that they admitted what they were doing after being told by their county attorney, who's a Republican, this is against the law. They still did it. And they didn't do it because, despite what you're going to hear some of the far-right, anti-democracy types saying, they didn't do it because they were worried about what happened in Cochise County. They did this as a protest about something that happened in a different county. So I think that the law is actually going to be pretty clear here, that they made this decision to break the law intentionally as a protest. And hey, they might not take their oath of office seriously, but Chris Mays does. She's got to enforce the laws. And 16 everyday Arizonans indicted her. All
right, we're going to wrap this up here. We've got about 15 seconds left, Marcus. We started the show talking about Sandra Day O'Connor. Maybe you can say something, because I contend you cannot overstate the importance of Sandra Day O'Connor and her legacy here in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, you think of Sandra Day O'Connor, Barry Goldwater, Greenway, Udall. I mean, she was a trailblazer, not just for women, of course, but for all Arizonans, and really put us on the map. And I still remember meeting her when I was probably 10 years old and thinking that was the coolest thing ever. And of course, I have a little bit more respect for her because she was a fly fisherman, or fly fisher woman, and probably one of the first, actually.
All right, we're going to have to end it right there. And that is all the time we have. Be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.